Good morning. Welcome to Subjective. I am thrilled and honoured to be talking to the wonderful Susie Bick this morning. Good morning, Susie.
Morning.
How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Good. So the premise of this, as we know, is that I talk to you about a series of photographs which you've been in, and then I get a little bit of your point of view and your vision of what that photograph has taken. Because of course we all know what it's like to look at the photograph, but we don't know what it's like to be in the photograph looking out. So, before we get into particular photographs, can I ask you to tell me a little bit about your childhood, where you came from?
So I was born in Cheshire,
Right.
and then as a baby I moved to Lagos in Nigeria, and I grew up firstly in Lagos, and then we moved to Malawi, and I lived in Malawi till I was about 7. So all my formative years were really there. Then we came back, moved back to Cheshire, then I sort of moved to South London after that, to Bromley.
Yeah.
How I sort of started modelling really was just, I was a kind of runaway from school kind of girl. I think because I was in so many different schools all my life, I never felt quite right anywhere. My parents were trying to get me into a local school in Bromley, but they were having trouble finding one that would have me because I'd already been on the run from another school. So they sent me in the Easter holidays to stay with my dad in New York. And whilst I was in New York, my dad was really busy, so he sort of let me loose out in New York on my own.
Right, okay.
And whilst I was there, I happened to walk into this building, Carnegie Hall, and there was someone hammering a sign on the door as Beth Ann model agency. It was the famous Beth Ann. And I just walked past and she said, "Hey you," she said, "I'm going to send you to see one of our testing photographers," who happened to be Stephen Meisel at like 19 years old.
Excellent.
But so I went off to see Stephen Meisel. He just took one look at me. I'm like a schoolgirl with a kind of Human League haircut and like not in any way sophisticated whatsoever. And he just said to me, "Look, you're lovely, but I really think you need to go back to school. You know, you're very young, and I'm not sure you're cut out for this." So I was relieved.
That, but Stephen Meisel himself is a little bit of a kind of like a
yeah.
million miles difference looks-wise.
He was very beautiful. I remember just being mesmerised by how he looked. You know, he was so kind of gorgeous and like, you know, this beautiful looking man, and I was actually really embarrassed that I'd even gone to see him. I didn't feel like worthy of being sitting there in front of him. So I went back to school, but on the plane going back home I met a couple of models on the plane, weirdly, and they were sort of saying, "Oh, you know," I got chatting to them somehow, and anyway, so there's this always in the back of my mind, this modelling thing, but so that's sort of how it kind of started. And then I ended up going back to school, to this sort of like this school in Catford that was, didn't notice if I wasn't in the lessons. They were so huge that I just sort of stopped going to school and started sort of hanging out in London, and then sort of ended up somehow being spotted again by someone and asking me to model. And you know, it's sort of, I just was this kind of little bit of a wayward kid and just sort of amazed that anybody would be interested in me in modelling, because actually at the time I was quite small for models. You know, I was like 5'8", and they were all 6 foot, and Jerry Hall in those days, and beautiful with blonde hair, and I was this little kind of goth, kind of little kid mod goth. God knows what I was. But
so so other than testing with Stephen Meisel when he was doing test photography, which is wonderful to know, that's going to catapult me into David Bailey, who is the first photographer I want to talk to you about. My first picture, I've got a Vogue cover by Hiro. So is that before? When I was 18. Is that before Bailey or after Bailey or during?
That was before Bailey.
Before. Oh, good. Okay, I've got the chronology right then. Okay, so if you could look, this is a picture I'm talking about. So was that your first Vogue cover?
Wow. That was in Rome. I was 18.
Do you remember what Hiro was like?
Oh yeah.
Tell me.
Oh my God, he was. I mean, I'm still completely fascinated and remember so much about that day, because I was in this kind of, he built this kind of box, and I was inside a box, and it had car wing mirrors bouncing light off. So he was kind of angling, like this light here on my hair there, and on my eye here. That was like these car wing mirrors. I was like in a TARDIS, and he had little tiny spotlights like shining on these car wing mirrors that were attached to the box, like bouncing light off. And it was, I've never seen that before or since, and I was so fascinated. And he was angling, and there was, so it was Hiro Suga was doing the hair, Japanese incredible hairdresser, who I don't think is still with us. And Hiro, who's, you know, who didn't really say very much to me. He was just like bouncing all this light off, and I just was sitting there just kind of thinking they're never going to use me. This just seems like, you know, but he was just, I'm so fascinated with that, what he was doing, because it was just sort of amazing.
Yeah, and was it very calm, or was it very frantic?
Very
was the music playing?
Very calm. No, there's just, all I remember is, I remember Rick Gillette doing the makeup, an incredible, legendary makeup artist who I didn't realise at the time was legendary. You know, probably took an hour, it was lunchtime. I was up in the hills in Rome somewhere, I didn't know where the hell I was. I was just like...
So your agency sent you across to Rome?
Yeah. Well, I was in Rome anyway, shooting the collections, because in those days they'd all get sent there. Every model, every photographer would be in the Hotel de la Ville in Rome. Wow. Everyone, like, at the time, it was like early 80s. There'd be all of us in the same hotel, like, you'd see Zimmermann, you'd see Helmut Newton, you'd see David Bailey, you'd see all those incredible models. It was like this sort of transitional time where it was going from the 70s to the 80s. I was just like, be in the hotel lobby, just go, oh my God, there's Zimmermann, and oh my God, you know, and all the clothes would be sent there, the couture basically. It was the couture, it would be there for a week, and everyone, all those photographers had to photograph it for Italian Vogue, so it was like this sort of, you know, the models there.
Fascinating, so it wasn't Milan, it was Rome?
Yeah, it was Rome.
Right.
I think it was twice a year.
Yeah.
I think I went like for about 4 years in a row, twice a year, where everybody would be in Rome. Yeah. It was pretty wild.
So, the system's changed.
Yeah, it has.